Welcome to Playback with another episode of History. Today we're digging into a story that is just wild. It's about how a single massive catastrophe gave birth to two things you would never ever think are connected. One of the most famous monsters in all of literature, and, yeah, the bicycle. So how on earth does that happen? Let's piece this incredible story together.
So our story kicks off with a total mystery. Picture this. You wake up, it's the middle of July, and you look outside, and there's snow all over the place. For folks in New York City back in 1816, this wasn't some weird dream. It was their reality. Frost on the windows, snow covering the streets in July. And believe me, that was just the beginning of the weirdness. And this strange weather wasn't just a local thing. Oh no, it was happening all over the globe. You hop across the Atlantic to France, and what do you find? Crops are failing, bread prices are skyrocketing, and people are rioting in the streets. Then you go to Switzerland, and it just rains for 130 days straight. It felt like the world was completely breaking down, and absolutely no one had a clue why. Okay, now here is where the story takes a turn that sounds like it's made up. This global disaster, this whole period of cold and hunger and just endless gloom, it is the direct reason that Frankenstein's monster was created. And somehow, it's also why the bicycle was invented. I mean, how is that even possible? To get our answer, we have to jump back in time 1 year, to 1815, to an island in Indonesia called Sumbawa. You see, the culprit behind all this chaos wasn't some curse or supernatural event. It was a volcano, a giant mountain named Tambora. On April 10th, 1815, Tambora didn't just erupt. It literally blew itself apart. Scientists call it a VEI 7 event. Now, on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, which goes up to 8, a 7 is it's a colossal, world-altering eruption. An explosion so big, it was basically guaranteed to have consequences for the entire planet. To really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this. A lot of us have heard about the famous eruption of Krakatoa, right? Well, Tambora was 10 times more powerful. This wasn't just another big eruption, it was the single largest volcanic eruption in all of recorded human history, period. Let me put it another way. Try to imagine the raw energy of thousands and thousands of nuclear bombs all going off at the exact same time. That's the kind of force we are talking about here. The sound of the explosion alone was heard 1,600 miles away. It's just staggering. But you know, the real troublemaker wasn't the lava or even the blast itself. It was the stuff it shot into the sky. We're talking 150 cubic kilometers of pulverized rock, ash, and sulfur dioxide that got blasted straight up into the stratosphere. And this stuff, it formed a kind of veil that wrapped its way around the entire globe. So now you've got this global blanket of ash acting like a giant sunshade for the planet, bouncing sunlight back out into space. The result? Global temperatures just plummeted. And this led to the infamous year of 1816, a year that would go down in history with a very, very chilling nickname. The impact was so bad that people came up with a pretty grim name for it. They didn't just call it the cold year. They called it 1800 and froze to death. I mean, that's a name that comes directly from some seriously miserable firsthand experience. The stories from that year sound like something out of a disaster movie. In New England, farmers would shear their sheep for the summer, only for a freak blizzard to hit in June and freeze the poor animals to death. There were reports of birds just dropping dead out of the sky, frozen solid in mid-flight. Across the entire northern hemisphere, staple crops like wheat and oats just rotted in the ground, kicking off the last great famine in the Western world.
You know, but there was a strange, almost eerie beauty that came out of the disaster. Famous artists like J.M.W. Turner started painting these incredible, hazy yellow sunsets. And he wasn't just being creative. He was literally painting what he saw. The sky was being filtered through a layer of volcanic ash. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Can you think of another historical event that literally changed the way we see the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
So, how in the world does all this global misery lead to a monster? Well, for that part of the story, we're heading to a villa by Lake Geneva in Switzerland. A group of brilliant young English writers had this grand plan for a summer full of sunshine and boating, but Mount Tambora had very different plans for them.
So they're trapped inside by this nonstop rain.
We're talking the rock star poet Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and an 18-year-old Mary Godwin. They were getting seriously bored and restless. So, to pass the time during those gloomy nights, Byron throws out a challenge. We will each write a ghost story. And you can just see how it all came together for Mary. You've got the endless storms raging outside, the spooky conversations they were having inside about galvanism, this idea of using electricity to reanimate dead things, and it all led to this terrifying, weaking nightmare. She had this vivid vision of a scientist kneeling over this horrible creature he'd made. That one vision, that was the seed that grew into Frankenstein. But what's really incredible is that the same rainy summer gave us another monster. Byron's doctor, a guy named John Polidori, he also took up the challenge. And he wrote The Vampire, which was basically the story that created the template for the sophisticated, aristocratic vampire that would eventually inspire Dracula. I mean, think about it. Two iconic genres, science fiction and modern horror, were born in the same room because of volcanic action. All right, so while all this literary history is being made over in Switzerland, a totally different kind of crisis was brewing in Germany. This one was all about transportation. And this crisis, well, it would lead to our second unexpected creation. So here was the problem. Horses run on oats. It's their fuel. But the year without a summer completely wiped out the oat harvest. With no fuel, the main way people got around just stopped working. Horses were starving, and a lot of them ended up being eaten just so people could survive. A German inventor, Baron Karl von Drais, saw this problem and had an idea. He set out to build a horse that never had to eat. And in 1817, he showed the world his invention, the Louth machine, which means running machine. It was pretty simple, just a wooden frame with 2 wheels and steering, but no pedals. You had to push yourself along with your feet. Now, it might look a little goofy to us today, but this was a total revolution. It was the very first 2-wheeled, steerable, human-powered vehicle. It was, without a doubt, the granddaddy of the modern bicycle. So let's just take a second to connect all these dots. The story of history is almost never a straight line, is it? It's this incredible, tangled web of cause and effect. A volcano erupts on one side of the planet, and it ends up sparking revolutions, one in literature and another in engineering, thousands and thousands of miles away. This right here, this lays out that whole crazy chain reaction perfectly. The volcano erupts, creating the ash cloud. The ash cloud causes the crop failures and the endless rain. The rain traps our writers inside, which leads to the ghost story contest, and boom, Frankenstein. At the same time, the crop failures lead to the horse starvation, which creates a transport crisis, which directly leads to the invention of the bicycle. It's all connected. Just amazing. And I think that's really the big takeaway here. The eruption of Tambora was a huge tragedy. It caused unbelievable suffering all around the world. And yet, out of that darkness, human ingenuity sparked 2 totally different revolutions. One of pure imagination, giving us one of our most lasting monsters, and one of pure engineering, giving us the simple freedom of 2 wheels. It's just a powerful reminder that sometimes crisis can be the thing that pushes us toward creativity and innovation. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. What unexpected creativity might come out of the biggest challenges that we're facing today? If you enjoyed this wild trip through history's strange connections, make sure to subscribe to Playback for more stories that show you how history never really goes the way you expect. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.